Let's say we have a garden tour. I tried one earlier and then my neighbors were out and we started chatting, so I just stopped the video and I figured I'd come back to it. So I've been doing some research and I've determined that these 2 elderberries that I dug out of a ditch are, unsurprisingly, the native elderberry to the US. They're dormant right now. I do have zebra grass growing up behind there for additional privacy, but I am planning to take that down and eventually move my bone set up here as a privacy plant. It's a great privacy plant. It's native, and in addition to being a privacy plant, it's medicinal. It's about, mine's 12 foot tall in its current state, but I think transplanting it might make it shorter for a little bit. I think I could divide it into 4 plants and line it up all along here and never worry about privacy from this angle again. The naturalized hops are something that I harvested most of, but clearly missed a couple. And it planted itself apparently about here. And a couple years ago, it's a female obviously, and it just decided to come up over the arbor that didn't have anything growing on it. So I was really excited about that. That was pretty cool. Yeah. So I've been keeping a lot of the wood that I cut. These are trees that I cut out of the neighbor's hedge. I've been trying to fill in that gap in their hedge too, to increase my privacy. This is me killing off the vegetation here. It's called solar treating or black tarping, obviously, obvious reasons on the latter name. And then I'm going to start doing more intentional growing here because I got really tired of having to dig the grass out of my lawn because I hate grass. And this lawn setting makes it hard to see the grass coming. I've also been having a greatly increased problem with ticks. Nobody likes that. That's no good. So I don't know if I'll kill this side next. I think I'm more likely to go after the area surrounding the shed next. And of course there's this terrible overgrown zone behind my shed. It's hard to tell with the sun glare, but that's just completely inaccessible. And I would eventually like to fix that problem too. So we'll see how that goes. I was able to kill a good bit of the bittersweet that was growing here. It's the massively invasive form, the Asian bittersweet. We do have a native type. Neither of them are all that super useful. They're just pretty and toxic. But yeah, those are some of the seeds that I plucked off of. I've been trying to reduce the seed load that's falling down over the hillside as I'm preparing to do a temporary plant. It's a temporary terrace that's planting, and it's included in my last video. I found that the groundhog gopher hole is right there, and he's kind of living under the shed apparently because there's an exit on the other side. Behind that planter is why there's a fence around my tarragon. I do plan to plant a couple baby pawpaw over here. Just get them going around this oak tree before the oak tree decides to kick the bucket, because I don't know, it's getting more and more covered in lichen, and the ivy wants to strangle it. I'm not sure how we're going to do. It's not quite as tilted as this one. Eventually that one will tear out part of the hill and go, but that's none of my property. And this one would come down onto my property. As long as it falls down the cliff and not towards my shed and house, we'll be alright. So of course the fire pit's doing well. And I've comfrey, and in the tub there I have a raspberry plant. It gets almost no rain on it though, so I don't know if that's an ideal location after all. Yeah, so there's stuff going on here. This is rue, a little bit of sage, a little bit of aster popping out of the middle, a little bit of sage on the other side. I don't know. Strawberry. Strawberries that are struggling. Hollyhock with the pennyroyal underneath. And then something that I think is a strawberry. Dunno. Oh, maybe that's why we're having trouble here. Mole hole. Lovely. Yeah, so the pennyroyal seems to love it up in here, so I'm gonna hopefully get it spreaded. I put one in here, did it? Oh, it needs sun. Okay. It needs sun more than it needs leaf protection. Okay. And then something over here looks dead. Totally dead. Oh, that's fine. That's the violet. The underplanting on all of these is, and or perhaps was, with as strong as these strawberries are going, it was violet. It might still be violet. We'll see. And then I've been caring for the moss in many places. Look at how fuzzy. Oh, so fuzzy. That's really cool. Yeah, so my retainer wall is mossy in places, and I find it exciting. I'm tarping over this area as well, and would like to lift out the, what are these called? Tree lilies before I tarp the rest of it. So this, I'm thinking right here at the corner of the shed once this comes up. I think that'd be beautiful. Those were tomatoes that did almost nothing. Too many slugs in that hole. Too many slugs everywhere. Oh my goodness. The daikon type of plant, eggplant, did really well for my garden at any rate. I got a whole 5 small eggplants off of it this year. That's a ton for me. And then the other kind just did 1. It was like Oriental Express or something like that. The apples, I just harvested the rest of them today. I only ended up with 8 total because of the deer coming through and eating all of the baby fruits off of. I got no pears, even though it was covered in them in the early spring. Deer ate them all. Thinking about planting something somewhat spiny down the front, like low and spiny and probably fruit producing. Maybe gomi berry or something like that. Something short, spiny, and fruit producing. Perhaps even mahonias. They like shade, although they're west coast, so they don't always do so well here. The hedge is massive and unkept by the neighbors. The collards were obviously heavily browsed by the slugs, but now that it's too cold for slugs, I'm getting some really good food off of them in December. Here's another sage. There's another sage. They just seem to grow themselves, and I think they're cute. I mean, look how cute. It's cute. A couple more collards in here. And then all of those hollyhocks that I planted. Boop, boop, boop. That was the original. These are from a packet of mixed colors, so I may end up with all different colors, which would be really cool, especially since I get to eat them too. Alright, so there's a whole bunch of what I planted the rhubarbs that almost died through here, and there was one that was still kicking, a couple more that were doing alright, and then I've got a couple of I see, is that a hollyhock? What was that? Yeah, this is another hollyhock here that's still alive but getting a little bit scorched by the cold, I guess. It'll go dormant, it'll be fine. And then a whole bunch of red clover over here, another hollyhock. The lovage, I just balled up its greenery so that it's not choking everything else in its area. And this is all the asparagus. That's what it looks like in the off season. And then I temporarily put the dwarf ever-flowering daylily here, because it turns out there's a great food crop, and dug a hole to move the plum over in the early spring. Oh, here comes the neighbor dogs. They're going to start barking for our video. These are all self-seeded radishes. I just got a whole bunch of really big radishes out of that. And then there's onions. A lot of these little spiky things here are onions. And it's another rue right there. This is a hole for that, but I'm not going to move it until it's fully dormant. This is a plum that's too close to the cherry that may or may not make it, but it just doesn't want to go dormant. It's still green. That's going to be fantastic. The cherries seem to much more like to drop their leaves than the plums, apparently, even though they're both the same family of plant. So, yeah. This tree dropped all its leaves except the ones at the tips in September. I gave it a ton more mulch in the form of potassium-rich ash, because I think it's vermiculin wilt, and that's supposed to help suppress that from affecting the plant. And I gave it a ton of, I had too many calcium pills, so I've been popping those around the garden too, letting them just rain in. This is the bone set plant that I'm talking about digging up and putting as a privacy screen in the front yard. Looking at that, you can see how much of a chore it's going to be to dig it up, but I would like that spot for a couple more food trees. So we'll see. And then the same thing with this low growing plant here has been spreading a good bit too aggressively. I just realized I could put gooseberries underneath those two trees. I was talking about putting something spiny to keep the deer away. Ooh. Okay, so that was a realization. But these I'm thinking of putting in where the comfrey is in the front, because they are just, whew, they sucker. They end up everywhere. It's a ton of food, but it's a lot to deal with as far as like trying to keep it under control. I dug up so much sticks, and I just trimmed it back so I can clearly get through the walkway without pushing them aside. So yeah, this hole's for that. This cherry tree seems to be having some trouble. This is Saskatoon, a native that was supposed to get about 8 to 12 foot tall, but got browsed by deer when it was a baby, and so it's about 3 foot tall. Yeah. This is the cherry tree. It seems to be just like crying. Look at that. And that's from the base of the plant, so if it makes it through the winter, it'll be great. We'll see. We'll see. So I'm trying, and that's 3 out of 4 of the major branches at their base are just pouring sap out. So I don't know if that seems like a really bad thing. I looked it up, and a propane torch might be used to help protect it, so I might be able to do something about that. We'll see. But it also might just like burn the tree, so I don't know. The other Saskatoon. So, as mentioned, I'm looking at getting native cherry bushes in here instead, because I think they'll do better. So this one's got vermiculin, that one's got some sort of crying disease. And I'm going to put 2 more hazelnuts here because they get 12 to 15 foot, and I really need privacy from that neighbor. Ugh. And that corner, once I have the bone set out of there, then I think that corner is perfect for a it's going to be perfect for a Siberian pea tree, which isn't invasive in this region because our winters are wet, and those seeds need drier winters than what we have. Besides, we don't have a very hard freeze anymore, except for a few days out of the winter. Our winters have gotten a lot more vacillating. I wouldn't say mild, but vacillating. They go from 50 to -20 and back again. A lot. And it seems to only snow on Wednesdays, and I want to go skiing. It's very annoying. So, yeah, that's what's going on in here. I'm thinking with that little notch right there where I can see through to the neighbor, I am thinking to put ostrich fern in there. And I'm also thinking, because I have a lot of these baby, I planted for them the same hedge to go right along there. And that is just your standard Chinese privet. If you never ever trim it, it apparently gets about 12-15 foot tall, but I'm gonna tuck a couple of, maybe 3 hazelnuts in here so that I'll also have a little bit of crop interspersed. And then right here it transitions to Rosa Sharon, which is stupidly invasive. It's so annoying. And I'd like to replace that with spice bush, or I kind of wonder if the hazelnut would do alright in there. Maybe I can get more hazelnut than I thought. Let's just take a step up onto the retainer wall here. At least I got this all accessible, because this was all overgrown too, and I got my ladder off the ground. But you can see there's not only is there a hops that grows up out of their compost and pulls everything down. Like, I trimmed the tops off of these because it was just like growing onto my shed roof. But these are Rosa Sharon and a little bit of the Chinese privet I can see, and then there's the hops and the ivy coming through, and the ivy is really just taking over. I hate ivy. God, do I hate ivy. It's awful. So, yeah, this is a section to be dealt with for sure. Maybe hazelnut would do okay right there. I love hazelnuts, so I wouldn't mind. And then there's the little structure that I brought for my cat when I had her 14 years ago, and it is tumbled like the tumble shacks you see along the highway in rural areas. It's fallen over and it's destroyed. I gotta get that taken care of. And this has mulberry type leaves, so I'm a little concerned it might be a mulberry, possibly even a big one. So there's a couple more trees that gotta come out of here too, but the Rose of Sharon's just taking over everything. I really, really don't like it. We'll see how this goes. Oh! In that hedge we have a little song sparrow chirping away. Well, this has been a relatively long video at this point. The English time did really well. The tarragon is definitely taken and is stable, but I had to protect it from the groundhog who likes to come in and out right here. I keep dumping cat litter. Oh. Yeah. Porch is a mess. Not as bad as it was, though, not by far. And this video is definitely long enough. Bye-bye. December 3rd, 2017.